Steph, now that the dust has settled, what did this year kind of reveal to you about the core that you have and what you guys need to do to be as good as you want going forward?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it just revealed the kind of character that we have. The tough.
We all thought we knew the plan. The narrative was set in stone. After the most chaotic, high-pressure, and physically exhausting year in the history of women's basketball, Caitlin Clark was supposed to disappear. The mandate was clear. Go home, pick up a golf club, sleep for a month, and let the world miss you. That is exactly what the Indiana Fever brass promised. And it is exactly what new head coach Stephanie White demanded when she took the job. White came to Indiana with a specific vision: to take a burnt-out superstar and turn her into a championship weapon. But that vision just took a massive hit. In a move that has blindsided the coaching staff and sent shockwaves through the league, NBC announced that Caitlin Clark isn't just resting this offseason. She is joining their broadcast team. The ink is dry, the cameras are ready, and the break everyone talked about has officially been canceled. While the fans are cheering for more Caitlin, sources suggest the mood inside the Fever organization is entirely different. Stephanie White, a coach known for her intensity and no-nonsense approach, is reportedly furious. She sees this not as a career move, but as a distraction that threatens to derail the upcoming season before it even starts. Why would Clark turn down millions to play basketball in the unrivaled league, claiming she needed rest, only to sign up for a high-stress media gig? Is the league sacrificing its best player for ratings? And most importantly, can Stephanie White save Caitlin Clark from herself? The tension is boiling over in Indianapolis, and the honeymoon phase is officially dead. This is the story of a coach trying to protect her team, a corporation trying to milk a cash cow, and a superstar caught in the crossfire. To understand why Stephanie White is reportedly seeing red, you have to understand the physical reality of Caitlin Clark's last 18 months. This isn't just about a player taking a side job. It's about a human body, pushed to the absolute limit. From the moment the NCAA season began at Iowa, Clark has been sprinting. She played a grueling college season, carried her team to the national championship, and then, without even a week to breathe, was drafted into the WNBA. Most athletes get months to transition. Clark got days. She was thrown into the deep end of professional basketball, facing the most physical defenders in the world, night after night, while carrying the weight of the entire league's popularity on her shoulders. She played nearly every minute of every game, broke records, and dragged the Fever to the playoffs. When the season finally ended, the consensus from every medical expert and trainer was simple: shut down. Complete shutdown. The central nervous system needs to recover. The micro tears in the muscles need to heal. The mental fatigue of being the most famous face in sports needs to dissipate. This was the premise under which Stephanie White operated. When she was hired to replace Christy Sides, she looked at the roster and saw a Ferrari that had been driven off-road for 50,000 miles without an oil change. Her entire off-season strategy was built around the idea that Clark would return in April fresh, hungry, and physically restored. But the NBC deal shatters that strategy. Broadcasting isn't just sitting in a chair talking about hoops. It's travel. It's production meetings. It's makeup chairs, hot lights, and the constant pressure to be on. By accepting this role, Clark has effectively extended her season. She has replaced physical exertion with mental exhaustion, and for a coach like White, who demands absolute focus, this is a betrayal of the recovery process. We need to talk about who Stephanie White is, because her personality is the key to this entire conflict. White is not a player's coach who lets superstars do whatever they want. She is a grinder. She is a tactician. She comes from the old school of basketball where the team comes first, second, and third. When she left the Connecticut Sun to come back to Indiana, she didn't do it for the PR. She did it to win a ring. In her introductory press conference, White was incredibly specific about her plans for Clark. She didn't talk about marketing or jersey sales. She talked about decompressing. She used words like longevity and sustainability. She explicitly stated that the goal for the winter was to get Clark away from the game so she could miss it again. White knows better than anyone that the sophomore slump is real, and it usually hits players who don't take their off-season seriously. Now, imagine you are Stephanie White. You have spent weeks designing a training program and a mental reset for your franchise player. You are banking on her silence. You are banking on her boredom. And then you open your phone and see that your player, the one you are trying to protect, is going to be flying around the country for NBC, analyzing Big Ten games and keeping herself squarely in the center of the media circus. It undermines White's authority before the first whistle blows. It sends a message that the brand is more important than the ball. And for a coach trying to instill a culture of discipline, that is a dangerous precedent to set. Here is where the situation gets murky and, frankly, a little suspicious. Just a few weeks ago, the basketball world was obsessed with Unrivaled, the new 3-on-3 league started by Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier. They wanted Caitlin Clark badly. They reportedly offered her a Lionel Messi-like package, millions of dollars, equity in the league, and every perk imaginable. The entire world waited for her answer, and the answer was a firm no. The reasoning given to the public was consistent. Caitlin needed to rest. She wanted to step away from the court. Fans respected that. Even the other players, while disappointed, understood that she was exhausted. It was a mature decision. But now, with the NBC announcement, that decision looks completely different. If she was too tired to play basketball with her peers, the very women she will be competing against next season, why is she not too tired to work for a TV network? This creates a massive optics problem for Stephanie White to manage inside the locker room. How does it look to the veterans on the team? How does it look to players like Aaliyah Boston or Kelsey Mitchell, who are grinding in the gym or playing overseas? It paints a picture of a superstar who considers herself above the grind, someone who prefers the glamour of the studio to the sweat of the court. White knows that locker rooms are fragile ecosystems. Jealousy and resentment can destroy a team faster than a bad defense. By choosing the camera over the court, Clark has inadvertently separated herself from the sisterhood of the league, and White is the one who will have to patch those cracks when training camp starts. There is a layer of irony here that cannot be ignored. Stephanie White knows exactly what Caitlin Clark is signing up for because White is a broadcaster. She has spent years calling games for ESPN and the Big Ten network. She knows the industry inside and out, and because she knows it, she knows exactly how draining it is. Fans think broadcasting is easy money. You show up, watch a game, say a few smart things, and go home. White knows the truth. She knows about the late-night flights to random college towns. She knows about the hours of film study required to sound intelligent on air. She knows about the producers screaming in your ear and the pressure to deliver hot takes that go viral. It is a job that demands mental sharpness and energy. When White sees Clark taking this deal, she doesn't see a fun side project. She sees a vampire sucking the energy out of her starting point guard. She knows that every hour Clark spends preparing for a broadcast is an hour she isn't spending on her own game. It's an hour she isn't in the weight room, It's an hour she isn't sleeping. White has lived that life, and she knows that you cannot serve two masters. You cannot be the best basketball player in the world and a top-tier broadcaster at the same time without something giving way. And White is terrified that the something that breaks will be Clark's performance on the court for the Fever. We have to zoom out and look at the strings being pulled behind the scenes. This NBC deal didn't happen in a vacuum. The WNBA recently signed a historic media rights deal worth billions of dollars, and NBC is a major partner in that agreement. The network has paid a fortune for the rights to air games, and they want a return on their investment. There is a very real possibility that this wasn't entirely Caitlin Clark's idea. The league knows that Clark is the golden goose. Ratings skyrocket when she is involved. It is highly likely that pressure was applied, gently or otherwise, from the league office and the E! networks to keep Clark visible during the off-season. They are terrified that if she disappears for 5 months, the hype train will slow down. They need to keep feeding the beast. Stephanie White is smart enough to see this. She knows she isn't just fighting a stubborn player. She is fighting a corporate machine. The WNBA and NBC are prioritizing content over championships. They are treating Clark like an asset to be monetized rather than an athlete to be developed. This puts White in an impossible position. She can't publicly attack the league or the network that pays the bills, so she has to fume in silence. She sees her player being used as a marketing tool at the expense of her long-term health, and there is almost nothing she can do to stop it. Let's get back to the biology of this, because the human body keeps a score that cannot be ignored. We saw moments last season where Clark looked human. We saw the air balls in the fourth quarter. We saw the frustration fouls. We saw the heavy legs on defense. Those were the warning signs of a battery draining into the red zone. The medical staff for the Fever likely handed Stephanie White a report at the end of the season detailing exactly what Clark needed. Core strengthening to handle the physicality of the WNBA. Lower body conditioning to improve her lateral quickness on defense. Significant weight gain to absorb contact in the lane. These aren't things you can achieve by doing a few push-ups in a hotel room before a broadcast. Building a WNBA body takes months of dedicated, uninterrupted grind. It requires a routine. Eat, lift, sleep, repeat. You cannot build that body while living out of a suitcase for NBC. By taking this job, Clark is effectively pausing her physical development. She is choosing maintenance over improvement. For a coach like White, who was brought in specifically to fix the Fever's defensive woes, this is a nightmare. She needs a stronger, faster Caitlin Clark. What she is getting is the same Caitlin Clark, just more famous and likely more tired. The explosion we are hearing about from White stems from the realization that the physical improvements she was counting on might not happen. The hardest thing to manage in professional sports is not the talent. It's the noise. And Caitlin Clark brings more noise than any athlete in recent history. The media scrutiny is suffocating. Every word she says is dissected. Every outfit she wears is analyzed. Stephanie White's job is to create a safe space within the team where that noise is shut out. She wants the practice facility to be a sanctuary where the only thing that matters is basketball. But by joining the media, Clark is becoming part of the noise. She will be asked to comment on other players. She will be asked to give opinions on controversial calls. She will be asked to criticize teams and coaches. This is a minefield. What happens when Clark criticizes a player on TV and then has to play against her too? Months later? What happens if she says something controversial that dominates the news cycle during the Fever's training camp? White knows that this NBC gig opens the door for a million unnecessary distractions. Instead of talking about pick-and-roll coverage, the media will be asking White about Clark's latest comments on the broadcast. It turns the head coach into a PR manager. It wastes time, it wastes energy, and it creates a weird dynamic where the star player is arguably more powerful and influential than the coach herself. That is a recipe for disaster, and White knows it. Stephanie White is a historian of the game. She has seen this movie before, and she knows it rarely has a happy ending. We have seen countless young phenoms burst onto the scene, get chewed up by the machine, and burn out before they reach their prime. The sophomore slump isn't a myth. It's a direct result of the chaos of the rookie year carrying over into the off-season. Look at the cautionary tales in other sports. Athletes who prioritized their brand over their bodies early in their careers often paid for it with injuries later on. The ones who lasted, the Sue Birds, the Diana Taurasi, the LeBron Jameses, they learned the art of saying no. They learned that the off-season is sacred. White is trying to teach Clark this lesson, but the world is screaming yes at her. White fears that Clark is addicted to the momentum. When you are moving that fast, stopping feels scary. Silence feels uncomfortable. But White knows that silence is where the growth happens. By refusing to slow down, Clark is flirting with a long-term disaster. If she tears an ACL next season because her stabilizing muscles were fatigued, everyone will look back at this NBC deal as the moment it all went wrong. White is trying to prevent a tragedy, but she's being ignored. There is another player in this drama, the Indiana Fever front office, led by Lynn Dunn. Where do they stand? Usually, a GM and a coach are in lockstep. But in this case, you have to wonder if the business side of the Fever is clashing with the basketball side. The business side loves Clark on NBC. It keeps the Fever brand relevant all winter. It sells season tickets. It sells merch. Stephanie White might be fighting a war on two fronts. She is fighting the players' desire to be famous, and she is fighting her own boss's desire to make money. If Lynn Dunn and the ownership group signed off on this NBC deal without consulting White, that is a massive breach of trust. It suggests that White doesn't have full control over her roster. This is the kind of internal politics that drives coaches crazy. White was hired to win games, but she may be realizing that the organization's priority is maximizing the Caitlin Clark experience, regardless of the cost to the win-loss column. If White feels like she is being undermined by the people who hired her, that explosion isn't just about Clark. It's about her own future in Indiana. Let's look forward to opening night. The Indiana Fever are expected to be contenders. The expectations are sky high, but the rest of the league has been getting better. Teams are stacking talent. Players are getting in the best shape of their lives. They are hungry to knock the Golden Girl off her pedestal. If Caitlin Clark steps onto the court for Game 1 and looks sluggish, the media will turn on her instantly. The same people praising her NBC deal today will be the first ones to write articles titled, "Is Caitlin Clark Distracted?" The narrative will shift fast. And who will take the blame? Stephanie White. The coach is always the fall guy. If the Fever start 0-5, nobody is going to blame NBC. They are going to blame White's system. They are going to say she lost the locker room. This is why White is so protective. She knows that her reputation is tied to Clark's performance. She is betting her career on this team, and she feels like the odds are being manipulated against her. She needs a focused assassin, not a celebrity guest host. We are approaching a breaking point. Stephanie White is not the type of woman to just sit back and let this happen without a fight. While she can't stop the contract, she can certainly control the environment. We can expect the start of training camp to be brutal. White will likely try to deprogram Clark the moment she walks through the gym doors. There will be no special treatment. In fact, White might go harder on Clark than anyone else just to prove a point. She has to reestablish the hierarchy. She has to remind Clark that in the fever facility, NBC doesn't matter. Ratings don't matter. Only the work matters. This could lead to friction. If Clark comes in feeling like a superstar, and White treats her like a rookie who needs to earn her stripes, sparks will fly. We might see a clash of egos that defines the season. White's explosion now is a warning shot. She is signaling to Clark and her camp. You can have your fun on TV, but when you step into my house, you better be ready to die for this team. The announcement that Caitlin Clark is joining NBC is a massive win for the fans, a massive win for the network, and a massive win for Clark's bank account. But for the Indiana Fever, and specifically for Stephanie White, it is a ticking time bomb. We are watching a high-stakes gamble play out in real time. Caitlin Clark is attempting to defy the laws of physics and burnout, trying to be everywhere at once. Stephanie White is trying to build a fortress of discipline in the middle of a media hurricane. One of them is going to be proven right. If Clark handles the load and leads the Fever to a title, she